Give me one of your teams because you mentioned one in particular when we were talking before the show that as soon as you said it, I was like, oh man, yeah. How have we not talked about this yet?
Dolphins.
Yeah,
Again, and this in a lot of ways comes down to age, and kind of where they are at several spots on their roster. Jalen Ramsey is going into year 10 right now as a defensive back. Teron Armstead is not on the team right now, unless there's been some update over the weekend. But Teron Armstead is on the team right now, so they'd be relying potentially on a second-year player and Patrick Paul to play left tackle for him. Tyreek Hill is going into year 10 as well, and I think his least productive season as a pro. Is that right?
yeah. And at some point, that was always going to happen, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And then you have guys like Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips who you've been relying on, where it's like those guys have been hurt a lot. I just look at the combination of guys who have either been injured or are getting old, and you start to wonder that did they miss their window? When they were super aggressive with Tua on his rookie contract, and now he's off his rookie contract. Have they sort of missed their window that they had there to compete at the highest level?
Chop Robinson had a really good year.
Yeah, Chop
last
was great.
year.
Like he is somebody we should mention as a young guy who's coming through.
And I think that there is something to that. Chubb. So I did last year when I did every team's most underrated player, I made Chubb the Dolphins just because if you watch, you go back and you watch all the snaps when he is healthy and he is on the field, he's so good. And Jalen Ramsey too is 30, but there were games last year where right up until the end of the game, I mean, he's making diving tackles and in meaningless snaps.
Yeah.
And he's still like there's still something there. But I think the question of the window
it's
is
like to me, Conor, like what I'm getting at is it's the number of older players.
Right. It's exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like one thing if you have one or two of these guys, it does feel like to some degree, like there are a lot of guys who, again, have either injury history or getting old that you're relying on. And it just seems impossible that the bottom doesn't fall out on any of them and none of them get hurt.
Right. Last year, and this has kind of been my charge, and I hate you hate to say it because it's sort of this nebulous concept, and I don't want to be one of those people that are you just cribbing off of the success of the team that won the Super Bowl. But I feel like I could say it with the Dolphins because I've been saying it for years. It's this lack of physical toughness, a ground control running game that's bothered me about this team for a super long time. And last year, you ended up having Miami, and yards per carry is a bad metric, but a lot of the good teams, right? The Ravens were number 1, the Eagles were number 5, the Packers were number 6, the Lions were number 7, the Niners were number 9, the Bills were number 11, I think. And so a lot of these teams, the good teams, are way up there. And down at the bottom, you have the Dolphins at 4 yards a carry. And again, you build this thing around
that's even
speed.
Boosted up by big plays.
Right. And you build it exactly. And so it's one of those things where it's like, at some point, does it, without that Raven-esque, Chargers-esque, Philly-esque kind of meat and potatoes to your core, are you always going to struggle to some degree when and Mike McDaniels had in 2023 they were 6th in rushing yards, they were 1st in rushing touchdowns, they were 1st in yards per attempt, but in 2022 and 2024 they weren't top 20. And again, just like we're talking about the Falcons putting a lot on Tua or a lot on Penix, that's a lot on Tua, and it's a quarterback that we still, I'm sorry, and I'm going to get killed for this, we don't know if he's great or not. We just don't, Yeah. We don't.
Yeah, and I think like that's and they did so much to make everything right around him. He gets the big contract, and now what if Tyreek Hill loses a step or gets hurt, and now you're relying on Jalen Waddle, who's a really good player, and like Nick Westbrook-Akina, like to me, it's like, again, you're looking at a situation where you're asking that guy to lift everybody up, which he's going to have to do eventually when you pay him like that, right? Like when you pay a guy like that, it has to be part of the deal. And I don't know for sure that he can, just because we haven't seen him do it, like, so it's an interesting spot to be in. And can he stay healthy? Like, that's the other thing. I mean, he's in that equation too of, older or, constantly hurt. Like, he's on the latter end of that, you know what I mean? The constantly hurt end of it. Like, it's just there's a lot of realities that I think this team is going to be facing where it's like, it wouldn't surprise me if we're looking at like a teardown after this year,
Right.
Like, if we're looking at them going in and saying, okay, like, now's the time we got to tear it down. Like, this is the last shot with this group of players.
Do you think that, 'cause it's so hard because what Mike McDaniel has brought to the fold has been this wave of credibility, at least on the social emotional side, right?
Yeah.
The Dolphins are routinely number one in the NFLPA report cards, which I know are something that everybody loves. But the teams who are Fs
Especially the teams.
don't love it. But the Dolphins are routinely crushing it in terms of some of the stuff that Mike has done. And I will say, like, the staff that has been there in place for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good people.
They deserve a lot of credit for that. Like,
For
a brand
sure.
new facility. Like, I mean, part of it's being in Miami, I'm sure, but that's generally like it. When you walk into that building, it seems like it's a good place to work.
Right. So do you give Mike the chance to pick a different general manager and chart a different course? Do you blow the whole thing up? And
I do. I 100%.
I do. I
100% would, like, because I think you found a guy who clearly has been able to maximize a lot of guys, and like, I look at like the history over the last couple of years. Now, you have some questions about the defensive coordinator thing. I think to some degree he was sort of forced to hold on to Josh Boyer, who was a good coach, but wasn't a fit for what Mike was looking for. You had the Fangio year, which obviously didn't work out for anyone involved. And I think part of that was maybe because Vic wanted to be in Philly the whole time, right? And then last year, it looks like maybe you've got it figured out now with Anthony Weaver, who you eventually could lose because he's starting to get a lot of interest from teams looking to make him the head coach. So, like, I look at like the job he's done maximizing guys on offense. I look at the job that he has done building a culture, and I'd be really interested to see what that looks like with younger players. With, like, we don't need to force it so we have an answer on a quarterback right now. If they were going to build a little bit more deliberately, like, what Mike was a part of in San Francisco, and he gets to develop his own guys, and he has a big say in what types of guys they're bringing in, and the sort of player profile, which he already has that to some degree. But if they really hit the reset button, I'd be really interested to see what that looked like.
He's one of the coaches that I'm most excited about over the long term. And I think that would be one of those situations where if the Dolphins were to ever let him go, I think he'd get another job almost immediately.
Yeah. I think anybody, I think other teams would look at the job he did with Tua and be like, you know what, this is a better bet than, maybe hiring a 35-year-old where we're not sure which way it goes.
So the Dolphins in total, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those teams that I think it's interesting because we've seen moments where the rubber just hits the road for an entire offensive line.
Yep.
And whether that's a change in philosophy or something that they do differently, or the way, Mike McDaniel could say, okay, we're not running whatever it is. We're not going to run as much outside zone this year. We're going to do something different, whatever it is. And that's like a blanket statement, but I do think there's some talent there. I mean, I liked Liam Eichenberg coming out of college. I thought that James Daniels was a really good free agent signing. Austin Jackson had probably his best year last year, I think you could argue. Before, while he was, I'm sorry, in 2023, and then 2024, obviously there was, didn't play a whole season, but I think there's something there, but there wasn't anything that was kind of directly addressed in free agency that made me think, outside of James Daniels, maybe, but made me think where okay, I also, dude, I look at, like, I mean,
left tackle is such a critical position,
It
and
is.
I don't think their offensive line is such where you could say they're so strong everywhere else that they'll be able to manage it. I get what you're saying about the other linemen, and there's some promise there and everything else, but like I don't think they're good. I don't think they have good enough offensive line where if left tackle somehow turns into a dumpster fire, right? Like whether Teron Armstead is there or not, if that somehow becomes a big problem for them, and I know they've played without him in spots over the last few years, like I don't know. I mean, like now you're talking about is Tua getting hit more? You know what I mean? Like, does that create the injury issue? It's just it. Like I can't get past this. Like this whole idea, this whole thing where it just looks like that the core of that team is on is right at the end, you know. And I can't think of a ton of situations where you had players of that age, you know, or with that injury history forming the core of a team that really made it happen at the very end.
Larry Broom, too, was another good depth signing for them this offseason. And I think that's what, I mean, you signed 2 offensive linemen in free agency, and that should kind of be, I guess, one of those things where it pacifies everybody and satisfies everybody. But I would have almost liked them to just go full on like Joe Douglas and, you know, you just bring in like 9 guys and just be, okay, we're going to compete every day and we're just going to start the best 5. And
I mean,
you know,
Joe
whatever.
Douglas did the right thing in my mind. I mean, Joe Douglas, like now they have their left tackle for the next 10 years potentially. You know
I
what I
know,
mean?
and maybe that's what Miami's doing here too.